I am Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Strengths Explorer series recorded on April 15th, 2019. Strengths Explorer is a podcast series that dives deep into the 10 talent themes of the Clifton Youth Strengths Explorer. It's designed for adults who are interested in accepting, affirming, and growing the individual potential within a child. This series expands your language to describe what might be right and strong, two very key words throughout the series, with children ages 10 to 14 and maybe a little on either side. To further your understanding, check out Gallup's book, Strength-Based Parenting, available wherever books are sold, or you can get it right directly from us at shop.gallup.com. And today is a season wrap. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com, for all your Clifton Strengths coaching resources and training needs. In this case, you also want to visit StrengthsExplorer.com. So we might want to write that one down as well. That's going to become very important in the fall as a site where you can get all this information. You can also catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. We call that podcasting. All the cool kids are doing it. You might want to join in as well. Head out to the coach's blog, coaching.gallup.com. Micah Librant is our host today. She's a workplace consultant with me. Micah, we are on episode 12 and the season wrap. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jim. Gosh, it's so good to be here. And what a wonderful way to celebrate something that kind of felt like new territory for us. Congratulations, Jim. We made it.
Yeah, no, it's kind of fun to get through all 10 of these. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from the audience. And maybe we'll just ask right up front, what has this done for you through the season? What kind of things have you learned? How have you been using it? Drop that in our Facebook group, send us an email, put it on Snapchat. No, don't do it on Snapchat.
Nobody will see it.
Put it on Instagram.
But do let us know in the chat group, for those of you who are live with us right now, what have you discovered through this? And then Jim and I will definitely share what we've discovered in our post show if you want to stick around for that. If you are listening to today, you're going to notice that our format is slightly different than our 10 theme episodes. And I guarantee that our pre-show or our kickoff show that we had with Jerlene Mosley and today with another very special guest are going to be two that you are going to want to watch over and over again. You will find that there's a great amount of what is our philosophy around strengths and children and strengths and families and strengths and parenting and teaching. And I think today is going to be a really great way to bookend everything that we've done, really going deep into those themes. But if you're here listening for a specific theme, rewind to last week.
Micah, let's go ahead and get started. Would you introduce our guest and let's get it rolling?
It is my distinct pleasure today to introduce to you somebody who I admire both personally and professionally. Her top 5 are arranger, belief, self-assurance, learner, and maximizer. She is the executive director of the Donald O. Clifton Child Development Center. And when I first met Mary, it was when I had a video camera in my hands and a microphone. And I was allowed, it was probably my first year at Gallup, to go interview some children in the CDC. And I knew instantly when I met Mary, because she came along and accompanied with me, that she was somebody who loves and lives for humans, no matter what age they are. Just the environment that she has created within this space not only makes it an excellent opportunity for children, but also for all the adults who can love and live and work with kids there. Dr. Mary Reckmeyer is also the mom of 4. She is author of Strengths-Based Parenting, which we've been following along throughout our entire series. She also co-authored How Full Is Your Bucket for Kids, which you can see beautifully displayed in her display if you're following along our video today. Hey, Mary, thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Micah. Thank you for reminding me about your video days.
It was a long time ago. I don't even remember what we were doing, but I do remember you were gracious enough to say, yeah, of course you can interview some kids. Here's some who will talk to you.
We have many kids with presents who loved having you there. So having a microphone in front of them.
Gotta love it. Hey, Mary, can you just tell us a little bit? We've talked quite a bit about Strengths Explorer. It's been I think the technical focus of this entire series. From your perspective, what was the original intent behind creating Strengths Explorer?
Well, so as an organization and just philosophically, we've always believed that it's important to treat children as individuals and to really respect their natural inclinations, their talents, their interests. And of course, we had StrengthsFinder, for adults, or let's say for, individuals about 15 on up. And, through our own research, as well as research of, a lot of other people, we know that focusing on strengths decreases pain, decreases stress, anger, sadness. And we know that when we focus on positive emotions and what's right, that people are happier. They've got better well-being. They've got more energy. They're rested. They're smiling, and they're learning. And so, why wouldn't we want that same thing for young people, for children? So we just had to do the trick of spending time figuring out how can we have an objective assessment for kids to help us all know what's right about them. And of course, we've been working with school districts for decades, and teachers, coaches, administrators, all they want to figure out what makes kids tick. They want to know what motivates them and how to help them learn best. And they want to be able to do that in August and September, not get to that point in April where they go, aha, I think I just figured out how to do this better for that child. And then it's summertime and it's gone. And so we knew that there were a lot of ways StrengthsExplorer could make a difference to young people and in development and in education and to parents and families. And so that's really why we wanted to create this tool.
It sounds like a big piece of it you mentioned is that objective tool that helps accelerate the speed of those conversations. I'm who's going to argue, right, with being happier and less stressed? I deal with adults most of the time who say that's the number one reason that they want any kind of intervention that we're doing.
Yeah.
But we also know that simply using that tool and having that strengths-based experience where you do experience that change, there's got to be something more than just the use of the tool. What do you think needs to go around the tool? What also needs to be there if we're really going to have that strengths-based experience for children?
Right. I think there's several things we can do to help get it right. Of course, one of the great things that the assessment can do is it helps you build a relationship quickly with a young person when you have something to talk about that's very much a part of who they are and what's important to them. And we learn best through relationships, right? So getting the relationship off to a quick start in the right way is key. I think also if we're going to get strengths-based relationships and development right with kids, we also have to remember there are not many adults. They don't necessarily think and feel and have this, put the same importance on things that we do as adults. I mean, adults have had a lot of years of experience, a lot of time to sort, but kids are developmentally, they're at a different place. They're doing their sorting, they're doing their growing, they're finding their pathways, and we've got to be sure and remember that. I think we also, in addition to getting those top three back, we have to continue to spend a lot of time listening, observing, and then, of course, accepting, appreciating, and building on what we hear, and helping kids to explore those natural inclinations and their interests. And I want to go back to the part about listening. I think it's really key that we remember we probably need to spend more time listening than talking or thinking we're giving a whole lot of great advice to kids. But take time to listen, ask them some great questions, and then let them talk things through. I think that's really important. And one of the things that I do like to remind adults about, it's my 3-second rule. So when adults ask a young person, whether they're 3 years old or they're 12 years old, ask them a question. Do you know what the average length of time is the adult waits for the child to respond before adding in or asking another question? It's a whopping 9/10 of a second. I mean, think about that. That is just nothing. So I say, give it 3 seconds, triple that time. 3 seconds is still kind of nothing. But if you do that, you really will feel the difference. Ooh, and what if you tripled that and got to 9 seconds? You'll really feel the difference there. But, just stopping and waiting and not having a preconceived idea of what the right answer should be. I also think when we're considering StrengthsExplorer and talents, that we also really need to give kids time to get good at something. Anything really, but just so that they have some kind of expertise, and that expertise might keep changing and growing, but it's giving a child a confidence about something that they know and that they can do, because it gives them that added edge and that added resilience. So maybe you're not a writing star, but you're the best at math facts. That can help you, kind of override and keep going. And so I guess those would be some of the things that I'd say we really need to consider in addition to StrengthsExplorer to really get it right with kiddos.
Yeah, let them be and be there with them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That 3-second rule is going to stick with me. This morning, my co-parent and I definitely piled on our 3-year-old over and over again, not just for having the right answer, but for responding to us really quickly. And we have more patience to watch, basketball players make a free throw than sometimes we do with little.
Isn't that right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mary, you've been involved in utilizing strengths for kids in schools specifically. What have you noticed is different in those schools that use a strengths-based approach?
Well, right off the bat, what I would say is I think there's a different level of energy, and there's certainly a different level of engagement in those schools, both among teachers, among staff, and most definitely among kids. Schools that take the strengths-based approach, that tend to use StrengthsExplorer, I think they also have a different mindset. So the mindset is not how do we get all these kids into the same box? How do we, make them have the same outcome? But they really think about them as individuals. I think they find a lot of ways to celebrate achievements and accomplishments. They've got, there's a lot of ways to do that. So, for example, they might celebrate a student's academic achievements and that they've got top grades, but they might also celebrate another child's volunteerism, for example. We do know that kids who are in strengths-based schools, they'll tell you that somebody in their school or that helps them be excited about the future. They've got teachers who not only can talk about their own strengths, but they know the kids' strengths, and they take time to build on those. And that's a really different, mindset than you'll see other places. And of course, when you're excited about the future, when you're engaged, you're at school learning more. You're accomplishing more. And I think that when you've got that focus, we also know through some of our research as well as others that kids have more confidence, they have more direction, they have more hope. And what I really love is they're kinder. That's a, to me, a fabulous outcome of all of this.
So we think about how do we get there? And you've got a huge audience of CliftonStrengths coaches, people who really are equipped with this brilliant understanding of what we're doing, and I think a lot of mission of wanting to do it. How do you think CliftonStrengths coaches can best help kids?
I think there's 2 primary ways that coaches can be most helpful. And number one is directly working with individual kiddos. So I think having those meaningful dialogues, those meaningful conversations that help affirm who each child is. I mean, it's one thing for your mom or dad, to say, oh, you're such a competing person, but it's another thing to have somebody else who says, oh no, this is really special about you. This is really what's going to help you soar. I think just that alone is huge. But then I think coaches also can be great at giving kids tools, helping them know ways that they can take their innate talents and build those into strengths. They can, help give them ideas for how they might expand some of their experiences. They can ask them great questions that help broaden their mindset. So I think that's the first thing. But the second thing is, I think coaches can really help kids via the parents. So parents, just like kids, they need affirmation. Even if it's something they already know about their child, a lot of times parents are thinking, okay, well, I think I have the most empathetic daughter in the world, but maybe that's just me because I'm the mom. Well, a coach can help affirm that and say, no, you know what, you're right. And that's something, really important to help develop. I think parents need somebody who's in their corner, and coaches can really be that person who's a little bit more objective than the, competitive mom down the street, right? So I think coaches can be that person. I think coaches can help share some really good reminders with parents or thoughts with parents. I love it when we ask parents to think back to when they were the age that their child is right now. And, and we just ask them, what were you doing when you were 12 years old? And what was important to you? And, what was your daily life like? And then I think to, ask the parent, okay, and how do you feel about who you are today? Was that okay then? I think it, helps when parents have somebody help them to, kind of step back and go, oh yes, that's a different time of life. But there was a little gal that I was working with named Carolyn, and just a little spitfire of an 11-year-old. And she was one of those kids that is kind of every teacher's dream. She was this great little compliant student. Well, I shouldn't say compliant student, but she was this great little student who always, did what teachers wanted. The other kids liked her, so she was a nice positive force for the classroom. She's energetic and engaging. But in talking to Carolyn's mom, Carolyn would go home and just drop into a clump in a chair every day. And mom knew something was wrong, but teachers would say, she's doing great in school. Well, we had to stop and think about who Carolyn was. What were her top 3 themes? Well, one of them was caring. And this little girl had a ton of empathy. So when she would come home and her mom would say, how was school today? Carolyn might say fine and just kind of be blah there. Well, little Carolyn, who was caring and had a ton of empathy, she was taking on the weight of the world on her shoulders, because if her friends were worried about something, she felt that and knew that and was wanting to help. But she's an 11-year-old girl, so she didn't know where to go with all of that. Well, how we helped turn that and change that was when Carolyn would come home, mom would give her a little time to be there. And then when mom would ask her questions, instead of saying, how was school, she would say to her, how did Anna's day go? Is Charlie's dog okay? And would ask her the things that Carolyn was really thinking and needing to talk through and debrief. And mom would just listen. But sometimes she could give Carolyn some tools for how to keep developing and using her caring talent in a way that helped Carolyn and her friends. So, but a parent might need a coach to help them get to that point.
Yeah, really reset that role even of that parent.
Yes, exactly.
We, I want to kind of accelerate. I think this topic of strengths-based parenting is probably the big piece that I'd love to get to. How do you know if you're getting this right? Like, what is strengths-based parenting look like?
Well, so how do you know if you're getting this right? That's a huge question. So that sometimes takes a lot of years, right? I mean, that's why parenting is, you don't get that overnight answer all the time, right? It's down the road. But strengths-based parenting, of course, is really about knowing your own strengths and knowing your child's strengths, but being able to use those strengths to be able to help your child use their strengths and grow and develop them. When we wrote strengths-based parenting, it was a little overwhelming because I started looking around and there are like more than 60,000 books on parenting out there. I mean, that's, most of those are about advice and what we should do. That's a ton of advice. And I know there's good advice out there, but you got to sort through it first. But I also know there's a ton of blanket advice out there. And, it just causes me to always say, wait a minute, how could you ever think there was going to be a one size fits all approach to parenting? We differ at over 1 million locations in our DNA. So how could there be one right answer for 7 billion of us on this earth, of parents and kids? So we just have to go back to that idea of we're all unique. So let's figure out not only what's unique about you, not only who is your child, but what's right. What are those natural inclinations? What are those growing edges that are going to help a child the most? So the perspective is to embrace what you and your child are naturally good at, rather than trying to push your child into who they aren't and into who somebody else thinks that they should be.
Mary, I hear you, it's more than just the book, right? The parenting, strengths-based parenting, more than just reading a book and following directions. There's so many nuances in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've also talked about you've got the book behind you, How Full Is Your Bucket, and How Full Is Your Bucket for kids. How important, that is a subject when we think about recognition. How important is this idea of recognition in parenting? And would you tie the two together? We sometimes think about it existing in the corporate world, but is it equally or more important in parenting?
I think it's equal. I would say it's equally as important in parenting. And I think just as in the corporate world with parenting, it's about getting the recognition right, and figuring out how does your child what kind of recognition do they like? Is it, do they want the whole family applauding for them? Is it calling up grandma and sharing on the telephone when something has happened? Or is it, orchestrating something bigger, a party or dinner out? But that certainly is about who your family is, who that individual is, and how can we best give that, recognition, or is it notes? But there's just a whole host of ways you can do it. But I also think that so we were talking about recognition earlier and about how full is your bucket for kids, and I think really the message in there, that's kind of at the base of where strengths is. It's about helping us all stop and see what's right, and kind of taking care of each other. So beyond ourselves, it's how do I stretch out to my peers, or to the rest of the kids in the school, and think about how they're feeling and what makes them feel good, what makes them feel important.
I do sense that we don't probably say this enough, but that recognition work that we've done with How Full Is Your Bucket and this idea of strengths-based parenting go hand in hand. We talk a lot about this in the corporate world, but I really believe we need to kind of think through. Parents can get that supercharged environment if they're spending some time thinking about, and we get clues to that through these themes, right? But how to recognize them best. And I ask students all the time in our internship, what was the best recognition you ever received? Mm-hmm. I don't think that's a bad question to kind of start working through with children, right? It's like,
right.
What works for you, and what in the work that you did in the CDC and that you continue to do in the CDC, how much time do you and your teachers spend recognizing the students, and what does that look like?
Oh gosh. It happens every day. It happens all the time. And it's, of course, we have quite a range of ages, and it's pretty easy at some points, because with the really little ones, when they do something, it's simply clapping your hands and they get that big old smile, and then they just want to do more of it. So it works great, with some of the older kiddos. They love when their parents come to pick them up. the teacher, because they hear everything, right? So hearing the teacher tell mom or dad, oh my gosh, you should have seen what Josh did today. And that's big recognition. Or they're figuring out about the recognition of, hey Jill, can you take this note up to the front desk for me? So recognition can come also through giving them responsibility. There's photos up of kids. There's photos up of of them doing things that they do well, or of showing off the Lego building that they created. So I think there's just a whole host of ways that it really plays into how kids develop and how it feeds their sense of pride.
That's fantastic. We've got a question here from our chat group, specifically about maybe that connection between parents or adults and kids. It says, what should we be careful to honor regarding strengths development for kids that is different than strengths development for adults?
What should we be careful to honor? Well, to me, I think that goes back to really considering they're not many adults. So I think we have to take them very seriously. We need to honor what they tell us, and they might not have quite as much confidence or experience as an adult. So trust what they have to tell you. And yeah, I think trust what they have to tell you, and just remember to listen and ask them some good questions.
That's definitely what I'm taking away from today is there are not many adults. All people differ at a million different places in our DNA, and people like to be listened to. Fantastic. Jim, anything else we should cover while we've still got our guru here?
I think there's one more question in the chat room when it talks about what would you say to people that worry about StrengthsExplorer labeling? We see the same thing in CliftonStrengths, right? And people getting labeled or put into a box. Mary, what would you say to that?
Oh gosh, don't do that. But
just don't
do that. But I think what really helps then is to stay out of a box, is to stop and really find out what that particular theme, what that particular talent means to that individual person, because that's when you really find out that you can't just box these. They're great because it gives you an idea of what's going to motivate the person, what direction they're going to go. But I think it's also really critical that you, at the same time, you have to find out about what that person's interests are. You need to find out what kinds of experiences they have, what kind of a community they're in. And when you learn those kinds of things, it expands, I think, the way you see the individual.
There's so much to learn. It's a starting point, right? It's that jumping off space.
Mary, let me say, I appreciate your work so much here. In 2005, I came across a book called Now Discover Your Strengths, right after First Break All the Rules. And I remember getting my top 5 back and thinking very clearly, I've got to parent this way. Like I can't, it wasn't, I need to change my performance at work. It was, I need to parent this way. And I remember taking that top 5 home to my wife and saying, 1, you need to take this. And 2, how are we going to parent this way? And when I heard a couple years ago, that we were going to produce this book, Strengths-Based Parenting, I couldn't have been more excited about it. That's one of these books that just, for me, just so settled into who I was and what I'm doing, and was really, really important. By the time, my kids were teens, by the time we got there with it, I would have loved to have you have written this book 15 years ago instead of just 3. But go ahead.
No, I was just saying, but as you know, Jim, it really, we're parents all of our lives, right? And so granted, it'd be great to have it from day one, but you're still parenting those adult grown kids. And what about your grandkids?
Yeah, no, right on. We have the next generation that
Mhm.
are coming up. We're already beginning to see some spotting going on with them as we
Ah,
spend time with our grandkids, and it's so great though. But let me just say thank you for the work that you've done. You've kind of laid a path for us all, and I don't think this is a one and done. As we think about parenting and working with students and strength spotting and recognizing them, there's a lot of work to do for parents, and there's a lot of work to do for teachers, and there's a lot of work to do for administrators, and there's a lot of work to do for podcasters. We've got a lot of work to do, and so we're really excited. Thanks for kind of laying a foundation and your continued work that you do for us in this role. I think it's you're a kind of a quiet behind the scenes, don't stir the pot, don't be really loud about it, but it's so powerful and all the stuff that we do. Mary, thank you for just being a leader in this space over the last 3 decades, 4 decades maybe, and just really doing such a great job of making it so powerful for us. Micah, anything else you want to add as we kind of bring it in for landing?
I think one of the things that I really took away today specifically from you, Mary, was we might write a book called Strengths-Based Parenting, but it isn't just for parents. The idea that anybody who's
right.
living on planet Earth with small humans or young humans is you're either in the trenches, you're on the sidelines, or you're there in somebody else's corner. So thank you for your leadership on this. I was the parent who read every single book written on how to get your kid to sleep, and all of them had a different perspective. And if I would have maybe slowed down a little bit and said, well, Micah, maybe your kid has other talents other than sleep, that might have been something. But I think there is such an appetite to get this right. It's it's our life's work, and so thank you for being there and filling that appetite with something that we all really need to hear.
You bet. Thank you.
We'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strength Center, just gallupstrengthcenter.com. If you'd like to be a guest blogger, Micah and I have thought about, we've talked about this, of offering, if you've got something to say around strength-based parenting, if you've got something in your brain you want to get out, write it to us. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, put guest blogger in the subject line, and we'd love to consider it for maybe an article in our coaches blog. You can catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all the past ones. They're available on our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup certified strengths coach, or really see a list of all the courses that lead to certification or some that don't have certifications directly associated with them, we'd love to have you take a look. They're on our courses page, courses.gallup.com. In 2019, which is when we're doing this right now, we've never had more courses available. Check that out. If you're coming to the Clifton Strengths Summit, June 3rd, 4th, and 5th of 2019. And I bet this will pertain to the summits afterward as well. So if it's after you're listening to this after the fact, this will probably be the truth. We have some discounts associated with our courses during the summit. If you take the two together, that's available. If you haven't signed up for the 2019 version of it, it's going to be pretty awesome. Mike and I are going to get a chance to do a live version of this at the end of the summit, which will be super cool. You're going to want to be a part of that. Head out to CliftonStrengthsSummit.com and you can get all the details associated with that. Join us on our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/call-to-coach. A lot of this conversation goes on. Micah, how do they find you on Instagram?
At Strengths Talk. You can follow us there.
We look forward to a little bit of post-show. And so if you're listening live, love to have you stay around for that as well. Appreciate you coming out as we kind of conclude this 12-week series on StrengthsExplorer. Micah, been pretty great. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of what we went through, I think, during this series, because these series change us as much as you're right, don't they? Well,
I mean, you think about it, we talk about something over and over and over again at a regular cadence and like dedicate our brains to it. Of course, it's going to change you. And this has been a wonderful experience and change for me. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the post show, but it's been great.
Let's do that. We'll get right to it. Thanks for joining us live. If you're listening live, stay around. If you're listening to the live recorded version, stay around. You're just going to drop you right into the post show. If you're listening to the recorded version of this, you can always join us live, gallup.eventbrite.com. You might want to get signed up for the season 5 of Theme Thursday. It's not out there yet, but it will be soon. We'd love to have you come out and join us. Thanks for joining us live. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.